I had a fascinating week last week. I went to New Orleans, and while I was there, I actually encountered a moment where I was being put in a super uncomfortable position, and I was actually being victimized. I mean, it was one of those moments where you just feel humiliated. You just can't quite believe that it's happening. And so I wanted to describe it today to you all because I think it's a learning lesson for us. I think that it's a what happens to all of us when we've been victimized of by victims of narcissistic abuse or other forms of abuse, or maybe when we're just a super easygoing nice person, we end up in these positions of where people take advantage of us. And one of the things that part of recovery includes that we need to learn how to recognize that it's happening and then do something different. So I want to kind of use my nearly failed experience to share with you, and then let's talk about how we all can become stronger and become less of a victim. So let me introduce myself. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Dr. Kerry Kerr McAvoy. I am a licensed psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience, and I'm a narcissistic abuse survivor. And for those of you who know, I wrote a book about it called Love You More, The Harrowing Tale of Lies, Sex Addiction, and Double Cross. And I also have been doing a YouTube series called Toxic Love, where I'm taking from a pathological love relationship from start to finish. So if you're interested in sort of the breakdown of that, I've been loving the series. I can't wait to pick it back up again. And I'm also launching a 2-tier membership club for less than a cost of one coaching call a month. You can have office hours with me, all sorts of courses and trainings, access to past webinars, access to future webinars, access to my book. I mean, I'm just filling this up with a whole host of stuff. It's for right now, it's on sale for $100 a month, which, like I said, is less than a cost of one coaching call a month, where you have actually 4 hours of office hours with me, 1 hour each week. So I'm super excited. I'm launching that next week. So be sure to if you want to learn more, check out the link in my bio. So what happened last week? Well, I was in New Orleans, and we were walking back from having this fabulous meal. We just saw the large cathedral. New Orleans is super cool. I'd never been there before. We're walking back, and there was a shop that had people out on the street that were showing designer soaps. Kind of cool. In fact, I thought it was something you could eat. It looked edible to me, like a candy piece of candy. So I went to reach for it, and they said, "It's a soap. It's a soap. No, don't don't eat it." And then they said, "Come on in. We have this really fantastic product." Well, you've probably heard or seen if on all these platforms about that product where you put around your eye, and it sort of like tightens the skin up and makes your bags disappear or whatever. Well, that's essentially the product that they showed me. I'd not seen it in person. It was a pretty powerful demonstration. And as I'm having this experience with the salesman, who was very good looking young man, and he acted like he was like all enthralled in this experience with me and my friend. I was traveling with a girlfriend, and he started to say how the product was worth $700 or $600, which, like, I'm not buying makeup for $600. And he said it would last a whole year, which, okay, that part is nice. That makes sense. If you kind of divide cream up over how fast you use it over a period of months, would that make sense? And then he goes on about talking about all the benefits of it and how you don't need to use it very often and whatnot. And then he says, "You know what? I will give you a special deal for $300 right now. If you take it today, I'll give $300, 300 half off. I'll get it half off." And I'm feeling kind of like pressured, like on one hand, it'd be nice because I'm on video all the time. I can sort of see the benefit. Yeah, it might last a year. All right, $300 is better than $600. And so I go ahead and I say, "Sure." Well, he runs my card, hands me the receipt, and and never says that it's a non-refundable, doesn't tell me this critical piece. And then he does this strangest thing. He opens the product and swaps out the inner tube. He puts in another tube in and then says he's making sure that it's full, which is like, no, it should have been sealed. The whole thing should be sealed. And then he also tells me in this process of this interview that he's got another client coming and he's going to have to rush this experience because he's so sorry, but they do these skincare experiences there and someone's coming and he didn't know that. And now he's kind of making it feel like, I'm on this timeline, which is really odd. And by the way, this was not a spa. there was nobody in there getting these skin treatments. So I started to think, this feels like a lie. This feels like high pressure salesman, and there's something's not adding up. So as I'm walking home, and now I'm starting to have this, buyer's remorse. There's way too much money. I didn't mean to spend that. And I'm noticing my friend who had the same demonstration, and her eye is turning a discolored around the eye, and my eye area is feeling crunchy, really odd. So I get back to the hotel room and I do a search, and I find that there's lots of complaints on this company in Better Business Bureau, that the product doesn't stand up and doesn't do what it's supposed to do, that probably he swapped out the real product with a fake one, which other people had said that had happened, and that the product itself sells for the cost that he sold it to me, not the cost that he told me initially, that he lied on the price. I'm sick. I'm now like sick. So my first inclination was just to sort of like hang my head and figure like, okay, lesson learned. Don't do this again. Never do an impulse buy like this. And then, I'm creating content while I was there. I'd had these videos prepared. So I'm creating content, and I'm talking about how not to be a victim. And here I'm like trying to like skulk into some corner, feeling super ashamed and embarrassed. And I'm thinking, how can I go online telling everybody not to do this? And I'm right back there. I'm right back behaving like the victim I was in that marriage, acting all scared of this guy and all scared of this company, everything. So I call my bank in the middle of the night to see if I could dispute the claim, and like, no, they said you authorized the payment. We can't stop the payment. I'm like, oh crap. So the next day, sick to my stomach, feeling really stupid, and knowing that this is going to be uphill battle because everything online says that this company doesn't return money, doesn't ever returns, takes the product back. I march into the store and to see the manager, ask for the manager, and I said, I'd like to refund this. By now, by the way, my eye is swollen and red. I have a lot of allergies, and I'm having an allergic reaction. So it's noticeably like swollen and weeping. It's weeping. So I go in and I say, listen, I want a refund. I wasn't mean, but I was firm. First thing the guy says, I don't like your tone. And we don't give refunds here. And I said, but look at my eye. It's weeping and swollen. I'm having an allergic reaction. He couldn't deny that it looked bad. So he's like, well, you can call this number. He points the number to the receipt, but no one's going to answer. He said, it's a voicemail box. Oh, great. And then he says, and here's the email. And it's a Gmail. It's not a company email. It's a Gmail, which is like, oh, that makes me feel really comfortable. I said, well, you know what? I'm going to write this letter right now and ask for a refund. And he says, well, I'm going to let them know they're getting a hold of you. And meanwhile, I'm knowing this is going nowhere. They're not going to help me, that I've been victimized, that they've taken this money from me for a product that's now I'm allergic to. Not only does it work, but I'm allergic to it. So I go ahead in front of him. I typed, and he's not nice. This guy is, not nice. But I go ahead and I type this letter out and in front of him, and I send it, and he messages somebody, although he says he has a number that I have a number that doesn't work, but the number he has work. He says, you'll be hearing from someone right away. Sure enough, within a few minutes, they said, we're processing your refund. He said I'd get a case number. No, they never get. So I wrote back, well, where's the case number? Silence. I let 4 hours pass. And I said, what's the update? Silence. 2 more hours pass. Now I'm like, you know what? Nothing's going to happen. So what did I do? Well, I did what I could do. And I felt bad about it, but I thought, I have this platform. I have 200,000 followers. I'm going to create a video. So I created a video, put on Google where they're at, name of the company, showed the receipt, showed the product, showed my eye, what was happening in my eye. I made this really nice finished product, this finished video, sent it to a friend of mine. What do you think? Was it complete? Yep, it was complete. And I write them back and I say, listen, I have a large platform. Well, it's not large, but it's not nothing. I have this platform. This is how many people are following me. This is where I go online. And if you don't do anything by noon tomorrow, I'm posting this video. Here's the link to the video. And then I include the link to the video. I kid you not. 25 minutes later, they said, this is not what we usually do. Come in tomorrow and you can get a refund. But you know what? I didn't like it. To be honest with you, okay, so I went in the next day and I was refunded the money, but I didn't feel good about it. It felt terrible. So I learned a couple things about this. And so I'd love to talk to you all about it. And that is about our fear, our struggle with being victims, and the fear that we have around standing up for ourselves and standing up for our rights. What gets in the way of all of that? Let's really talk about, as you're healing from narcissistic abuse, how are you doing around all these issues? Are you able to sort of hold your ground when someone pushes you? Do you recognize when someone's being deceptive? Let's talk about what goes wrong there. And thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for liking and sharing this. Please share this with anybody you think that might find this helpful. Please tap the screen or like it. It would be really, really helpful for me. And but let's get into this better. Let's talk about what gets in the way of us, because as much as I hate it, and I know, and this is, who's here, who's in this audience, I know the people who follow me are people who are generally healing from narcissistic abuse. You guys have been victims like I've been victims. You're trying to move to survivor and to thriver like I am trying to do that. And it's a process. It's not something just because we walk out of these relationships, we don't suddenly have it all together. I know I don't. I almost just slunk away and wrote the money off and just said to myself, do better next time, recognize this better next time. But I fought back. So I want to talk about, so as much as I never like someone saying, well, the reason you got into the abusive relationship is because you didn't hold your ground better. I hate that. I will never blame victims because we were deceived. If you saw my video that I put out this week that's doing really well, is narcissists are deceptive. We were deceived, and they lie to themselves first and then lie to us. And it's very hard for us to recognize something that's false when it's being presented as real. And then we get into this duality that creates more confusion. And then they're just frankly scary people. They're very intimidating, very scary, and they tend to box us in so that we're stuck and feel very trapped. So there's lots of complicated reasons why just leave is bad advice, or why when they ask us, well, what red flags did you miss? Why we missed the red flags. There's lots of reasons why we missed the red flags. But the sad thing about those relationships is that it trained us to be compliant. It taught us to be scared and fearful, and it made us feel deeply ashamed. We're really actually experiencing our narcissist shame. Their core root is shame, and they project it and they make us feel ashamed. And so then we carry that shame forward and then we act on it like it's our own. So part of a healing is discharging all this crappy stuff out and not repeating this, and learning how to, one, like that sales call made me feel edgy. I kept thinking, like, I felt more and more in shock. That feeling like something's off, something's wrong, and you're starting, like, you're dissociating and shutting down. I was doing that. I was like, my view was narrowing. I was really struggling. So, but learning to recognize that that's a sign something's going wrong, really going wrong today. And then the second thing is learning how to, then when it does start to go wrong, learning how to stand up when the people around you are going to view it as unpleasant. I knew that manager was not going to be nice to me. He had no reason to. He had all the power and the leverage. At that moment, he thought he had me. He even told a lie. He said, I can't refund your money here. It's not possible here. They're going to send you a box and they're going to do it remotely. No, they didn't. They did it there. So much was told to me that was a lie. They did it there. He was off the cuff telling me whatever he thought. I mean, talk about abusive. That store in New Orleans was abusive. All the tactics that you and I have experienced inside these abusive relationships, we're going to encounter in other places. It may be a workplace, like me in this store. It might be one of your neighbors. It might be a friend that you meet, or somebody wherever you go. You may meet somebody that does this. So let's talk about this. Again, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Kerry Kerr McAvoy. I'm a licensed psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience. I'm so excited to be here and talk about this topic, talk about how to turn from victim to survivor to thriver. So what kind of questions do you have? What kind of situations have you run into that make it hard for you to stand your ground and protect yourself better? I'd love to hear your stories. And it's so great to see you guys. And thank you for following me. I really appreciate it. I'm noticing that. I appreciate that. Yeah, though Brittany says the deception of knowing that they have the tendency, I think it can handle it until it harms me. Exactly. I know that. So Kimberly says, I often feel protective of myself and I'm hyper vigilant, which keeps me isolated. Yeah, that's another risk. So we tend to do a couple things. We tend to don't take risks at all, like we just cloister ourselves in some setting or with a group of people or something that leads us feeling safe. Or we tend to act like it's no big deal, or we tend to do what I do, which is to sort of like, okay, I'm not going to do anything, but I'm going to pretend it didn't happen to me and tell nobody. And then next time it happens, I'll do better. So we have these kind of reactive styles that we take on. So yeah, one of them, Kimberly, is that we definitely become more protective and vigilant. That's for sure. Um, yeah, it is hard. I mean, Phoenix, as well as Brittany, are saying it's really hard to pick up the social cues that a deception is going on. But you know what I recognized? What I recognized was that I felt uncomfortable as much. How we initially, when you meet the narcissist or someone who's really toxic, you feel this weird feeling like you can't believe it. It seems to be too good to be true, but also something's not quite right. You have this odd experience, like just weird. That's what it felt like. And the more the weirdness, because it wasn't a first time for me of experiencing this, because of the weirdness, longer it went on, the more upset I got, the more I noticed I was dissociating, like I was checking out of my feelings. I was disappearing. I was, that shock feeling where you just, everything starts to slow mo and you're seeing stuff that doesn't make sense. That's what I was noticing. So one of the things that you can learn to pick up on, and let's talk about even why that's hard, learn to pick up on your signals of distress. That's going to be the first thing is, do you know when you're feeling distressed? It may be like things are like time is slowing down or speeding up. Maybe your heart's racing. Maybe you're finding you have a hard time speaking. Maybe you're struggling with being mute. But you're gonna find there's some way that you're experiencing or showing stress. So notice that. Yeah, I love that. Finish with your BS me says it's really important to treat ourselves like an archaeology dig, that we're careful but curious. I love that. That's awesome. I call it like I say it curious but patient and non-judgmental. We need to be open-minded about that. You're right. Beautiful suggestion. I love that. Um, Yeah, yeah. So I've gone all the way back to the front of it. So yeah, Dawa says my sister's a bully. She knows she's using intimidation tactics like she's breathing. It's an almost like an involuntary reflex for her. Yeah, it is. It is for some people. I mean, I got to hear Sandra Brown several times. I took a 6-hour continue education course of hers, and then we interviewed her live for a webinar here. And by the way, that's a benefit of the group. So if you become a group member, which I said is less than the cost of one coaching call a month, that you will have access to all those webinars. Those are just free to all the members. So that would be something you might want to take advantage of by becoming a member. But one of the things that she said was, and she worked with psychopaths, sociopaths who were in prison. She was actually in a prison program, and so did group therapy with them, which she said she called it babysitting. She said all I did basically was babysit them. But she said that one of the things that she noticed was that they're instinctual, that they almost are like their ability to spot weakness is like snake-like, predatorily snake-like. And so you have to. So I agree with you that probably your sister has learned them, that they're almost like involuntary, because their root view of the world is different. Narcissists, as well as sociopaths and psychopaths, see the world competitively. They see it as a win-lose, and it's not the kids' game of tug of war. It's all out war. It's where somebody actually loses everything in the loss. And so for them, it's preservation. They see their winning as preservation of self, and that's super, super important to them. So yeah, I believe that your sister has learned it like literally like breathing, definitely like breathing. Yeah. So Brittany, say more about the confidence piece. I see you saying I just need to brace myself and learn how to get more confident. But part of it, here's the thing. We often think that, thank you so much for the gifts, guys. We often think that confidence comes out of feeling. Like when I feel confident, I'll be confident. That actually is not how it works. It works the opposite way. You have to you do things that are bravery is doing behavior under fear. It's really behaving, protectively under fear. It's not like a lack of fear. It's behaving, it's doing the thing that you need to do despite the fear. I felt a great deal of fear walking in. I had to walk in twice after I bought that product. The first day to ask for the refund, and the second day after I bought it to get the refund. I had to face them down twice. I'll tell you, every single time. In fact, my friend says, your hands were shaking. Yeah, my hands were shaking. I was terrified. Was terrified. So part of doing it is finding the ability to do something despite feeling really upset, very distressed, and very intimidated by it. That's really hard work. But the practice, okay, so here, now that I've done it and it's worked, now I have more. I can say, you know what? It wasn't easy last time, but it worked out. And even if it doesn't work out, you'll survive. So I can build on that. I can and use that to help me get better the next time. Oh, I'm so thank you, K Mom. I appreciate that. I'm glad it's been helping on your healing journey. Thank you so much. Yeah, they do definitely study you, pillar of light. They do. They observe you. They're data mining the behaviors. Exactly. I know. And you know what? They kind of, the more that first sales pitch went on, the tighter they were working me. Were putting me on the spot and making me feel really self-conscious and pinning me down. You're right. They get really good at that. But we can resist this. Okay, so let's take the worst case scenario when it happens. What's the worst thing that will happen? They get nasty. Okay, remember this is a shop. They're not going to hit me. They're not going to hurt me literally. They can intimidate me and make me feel really ashamed, but only if I let it make me feel ashamed. That I have to let it. I have to like believe what they say and let it impact me. But if I don't, if I like say this is ridiculous, no upstanding shop owner will treat their guests this way, their customers or clients this way, then I can disown whatever's happening to me so that it doesn't impact me in the same way. So it's partly what we then the interpretation we make off of what's happening to us that then gives even more power or helps break the power over us. Absolutely. So great comment. I appreciate that. Somebody said something over here. Let me go back and find it. Thank you so much for joining me today. Bye, guys. I'm so excited to be back. This week was my last week. Oh, I'm looking at comments. This week is my last week of going live twice a week, because now, starting next week, Thursdays, my lives will be office hours inside the membership at the academy level. There's two levels: the inner circle, which is community support, access to past webinars, direct access to me, a copy of my book, all that happen. And you also get weekly emailed exercises and tips for over a year sent to your box, or for a year. That's the lower level, that's $75 a month. And at the higher level, which is 150, but currently $100 a month. And normally the lower level is 100 a month, but it's on sale for 75 a month. But the higher level, called Academy, you actually get office hours. Each week you get office hours with me once a week, where I do a group experience. Also, there'll be ongoing guided breath work and meditations. There'll also be mini classes. I want to take the Toxic Love series that I've been doing, the longer content, and actually watch it together and break it apart, use that as learning experience. So I'm super excited about all this content that's going to be happening inside the group. So I'm pulling away and not, we're going to provide here as much, and putting it more of the effort, more of what I give is more going to be inside the group. So I'm super excited about that. That starts next week. So this week on Thursday, I'm doing the last of the guided breath work and meditations will be on Thursday at 1:00. And it's going to be all about tapping, how we're going to directly self-soothe. So if you're interested in learning how to do direct self-soothing when you're upset, which fits in this topic perfectly. I should have done that. Here I am outside in New Orleans, streets of New Orleans, tapping myself, trying to self-soothe. So I really needed it. But yeah, so I'm super excited about it too. Yeah. And Phoenix, you're going to be part of that. I'm so excited about you being a part of that. And if money is an issue, okay, you guys are here. You're my friends. I love you guys. You guys are the ones that are always here with me. If you can't afford it for some reason, talk to me directly, okay? I do not want money to stand between you and the benefit of this. I believe in it that strongly. Yes, it's nice for me to, monetize my content, but it's more important that we heal together. I'm very invested in that. And I truly believe in the power of a community in healing. I truly, truly believe that. So please make sure that you make sure you contact me about that. So and the subscriptions here are just going to be going forward, just your way of saying thank you to me for the content that I put out on these various places. So yeah, so I appreciate that, but I'm not going to be offering the benefits unless you come in directly as part of the membership. And thank you so much, Tiffany. I appreciate that. Oh, so your sister escalated violence, pushing you around physically like she lost her mind. Isn't it ironic? She ended up at a narcissistic husband who's 1,000 times worse. Oh, yeah, it is. It's a big loss. It's so sad. Pillar of Light, I'm glad to know the guided meditations are incredibly helpful. That's going to be a regular part of the membership. We're going to make that, we're going to have a backlog of libraries so you can always like pull them out and use them. I mean, I'm going to like professionally do them. And so it's always an ongoing benefit that you can then use them, but I also will live stream them. So then I'll just say, hey, we're going to be doing XYZ, and then you guys can come join us for that. So I'm super excited about that as well. Yeah, so he served jail time and your monstrous sister's married. Oh, yeah, karma is alive. Sadly, sometimes what goes around does come around. That's for sure. That's for sure. So other questions about how to move from feeling scared, feeling overwhelmed to becoming more confident, becoming more more of a thriver. Let me do this. Let's talk about what, by the way, thank you for sharing and liking this. It really helps me. But let's define for a second, what's one way that you know that you've met a surviving, thriving person? What's one characteristic that you see that says to you, this is a thriving, surviving, thriving person? I'd love to have you guys just throw out words. What words come to your mind? What's the first word that comes to your mind? For me is I think it's confidence. That's one of the words that come to my mind. Secure. I like that. That's a good word, Kate. Secure. Yeah, accountable and vulnerable. Ooh, that's great, Brittany. I love that. Yeah, so what words come to you guys' minds? Embodied and happy. Oh, they're forgiven. Strong. I love that. Motivated and busy. Freedom, self-acceptance. Great. Those are great words. Clear communicator. They have inner peace. I love that too. That's really great. There's safety. Exactly. Socially active. That's a good one too, Daphne. I like that. And Keith, so good to see you, Keith. Motivated and busy. I like that one too. Yeah, freedom has come popping up everywhere. I agree. Freedom is one of them. Okay, so here's the next question for you all. So when you think of all the words we just said, which I think really encapsulates it beautifully, adaptable. I love that. That's great. They're very adaptable. So what's one thing that's in your way? What's one obstacle between you and that? What's one step, one baby step that you could take that would move you from where you're at now to one step closer to whatever it is? I would love to hear. Yeah, like just start to throw those things out. And even if you like, oh, hi from Poland, so good to see you. Even if it is maybe I don't even know how you feel about it. Regardless how you feel about it, what's one thing that you could do? You have a lack of support, Maddie. Yeah, that's hard. So what's one thing you could do that would increase your support besides joining my membership? Yeah. So breathing through anxiety, Phoenix. I love that. Breathing through anxiety. That's great. That's a really great. Oh, so K-Mam says, keep up my journal, my gratitude journal, and remind me of what's good, even when it's bad. Yeah. So Keith, how can you face the doubt? How can you make one step closer to being adaptable and strong from a position of doubt? I'd love that. I'd love to hear that. And Samantha and Taffy, how can you guys move from one step closer to self-acceptance and freedom? So Brittany's saying, I need to get back in my body. So are you like feeling like you're struggling with sensing your body, like or taking care of your body? Like, can you say more what you mean? Yeah. So Keith said that he wants to remove the obstacles. Yeah, that's great. make choices. So Daphne says, make choices for myself and not for others. That's really good. Here's one of the things. And then Tabby Janet said, believe in myself and my power. I love that one too. Believe in your self-worth. That's another great one, Keith. Pillar of Light said, telling myself I'm safe even after I'm out. I'm telling myself that I'm safe. I love that. Here's one of them that I had to do. As I got back from this trip, one of the things I realized that going forward, this is a new vow. It's not going to be easy. I'm going to tell you, it's not going to be easy for me. If you guys know me, Brittany knows me. It's not going to be easy. Brittany can test. It's not going to be easy. That is, be myself, regardless of whether anyone around me likes it or not. Be myself, regardless if anyone around me likes it or not, because I'm very sensitive. I'm very attuned to people's reactions to me. And I tend to react when I feel those reactions. And so then I start to get anxious and then I start to freeze up and I start to like be less comfortable, So one of the things I'm saying to myself is that, you know what? So what? So they don't like you, whatever. Who cares? As long as you're being true to yourself, that's all that matters, right? Because I have to live with myself. I don't live with anybody else. Hey, Sarah. So I need to always be doing that, living authentically. I agree with you, Pillar of Light. That's a great word, living authentically. And you know what? And I'll tell you, I'm a little odd. I'm going to admit that right up front, guys. I'm a little odd. I'm autistic. I'm an extreme introvert. I don't like doing things that most people like doing. I'm not really into chit chat, not into sports. I kind of am a bit of a homebody. And when I go anywhere to visit, like New Orleans, I don't really want to go on tours. I don't. I kind of like just to go eat at really cool places and take in the atmosphere and then call it a day. That to me is more than enough. That's not everybody's cup of tea. And I know that. But you know what? It's okay that it's nobody else's cup of tea. They're not living in my body and they're not experiencing the way I've experienced life. And if they don't want that for themselves, they can either go do that on their own. I'm not holding them back, or they can choose not to go with me, right? So, I'm realizing that I just need to take space up, and it's okay. You all need to take space up, be yourself, be fully yourself. Exactly. Ghost Keith, you're the same. Yeah, I know. Since then I've heard people like, oh, I love to travel with you. You sound like exactly the way I travel, I'm not one that does a lot of walking and please do not ask me to stand and look at history. It's good. I appreciate that we've been there and done that and we're doing well, but it's not really how I want to spend my vacation, actually. Yeah, exactly. We just need to be comfortable in our own skin. Exactly. Yeah, I love, Samantha, that you're learning how to do that without fear. Yeah. Yeah. And when we lived in these abusive relationships, they've essentially put us in a box. They said, this is who you are to be around me. This is how you meet my needs. And that when you don't meet my needs that way, then I'm going to reject you. I'm going to abandon you. And because we're built for belonging, that's hardwired into us. It's built into us. We then start to capitulate because we get scared. We don't want to lose these relationships. So how do you do that with a lack of sense of self? Can you say universal love more what you mean? How do you do that with a lack of sense of self? Because I think it does take a sense of self. So I'd love to know what you mean by that. Yeah. So Kate says, one thing that helps me is take care of my body is pretending that it's 5.5 years old. Oh, that's cool. I like that. You're right. Like you're essentially being your own mother. That's really cool. Yeah. I had a similar advice. I had a therapist say this to me, and this is really helpful to me. She said, whenever you're experiencing an emotion, ask yourself, is it a new emotion or an old emotion? She said, if it's a new emotion, you're an adult, you're very capable, you're going to know how to handle that new emotion. But if it's an old emotion, like one of those that you've felt for a long time in your life, those are coming out of childhood. That's your wounded child speaking. And then when you're that wounded child, then you move forward like you are your own mother to that wounded child inside of you and comfort it. Boy, now when I feel the emotion, I say, okay, old emotion or new emotion? And then I move towards it if it feels like it's really old. And it helps. It really does help. I mother myself during those moments. So Universal Love says, when you don't know who you are exactly, for me, I have borderline personality disorder. I didn't develop an identity of my own. Yeah, okay. So I follow your question. It helps me. Thank you. And those are the cases where so part of the development of self is exploration. In probably your world or life or whatever, or your disability, the deficits you have as a BTD is that you weren't allowed to explore a whole lot. It was probably scary to explore. So I would approach it as this is the time to do that. So what do you like? Do you like this food or that food? Do you like it hot or cold? Do you like, in other words, be back to what somebody said early on, treat it with curiosity and exploration and without judgment or shame. In other words, have fun as you develop this sense of who you are. Now, the other critical piece with borderline personality disorders is a regulation of emotions. That's where they get really into trouble, is that feeling angry or feeling scared or feeling like you're going to lose a relationship or that somebody is like impinging on you too tight, it's going to make you feel panicky. So begin to learn skills how to handle those anxious feelings so that you don't react, but rather you just experience it. That's a big difference between experiencing something versus acting on something. And so part of the regulation is learning how to hold those emotions in a way in which you know that they're not going to overwhelm you and that you don't do something that's destructive to yourself or others. So that's another big critical piece with BPD. And thank you for, I've not created content on it. Um, and I should, because I am very familiar with it. I've had a lot of training in it. But I'll tell you why. I get anxious around it because of the dysregulation. People with borderline personality disorders get really intense about needing to be understood and feeling really hurt when they're not understood. And so they react. They get really reactive on social media. And I just haven't wanted to deal with that. But I think it's super important to understand. My father had it, by the way. My father, I'm convinced, was a mixed personality disorder with borderline personality disorder, and he had a bit of antisocial personality disorder. He was a mixed picture. I saw a lot of fear of abandonment from him and a lot of fear of engulfment from him. He was very connected to my mother, very fearful of losing that relationship. And so, yeah, my heart goes out to that. In fact, actually, it's interesting because of my two parents, I found him easier to relate to than my mother. He was more emotionally available than my mom. And so, in fact, when I was not doing well, he sometimes would hold my hand and just like be there. It was so great. I feel teary just talking about it. So, yeah, I have a special heart for all of that. And I understand the struggles. And I really strongly believe that BPD is one of them that is with treatment and hard work, there can be profound change. I've seen it. I've seen patients get better. So I think that's very, very possible. I think it's a very painful condition. There's a lot of fear at its root, a lot of fear. So, but thank you for sharing that. And I hope that little piece of advice helped a little bit. Yeah, Samantha, I agree. Loving ourselves and knowing what we have to offer is so vital in a relationship, but also just being able to set our limits, being okay with our limits and knowing that having limits is an okay thing to do. So have I read or heard of the book Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy? No, I haven't, but I'll go get it and I'll let you know what I think. I would love to know. I would love to. Did you like it, Kate? Was it good? Yeah. Yeah, I would love to know what you thought. So Alex says it's not, so Brittany's talking to Alex, and not your feelings that aren't true. It's those feelings that don't help. Now, that's a good point, Brittany. I like that you're saying that. It's true. Yeah. ADHD, Phoenix, will make you certainly feel scattered. That's for sure. Yeah, universal fear does stop many stops all of us from living. Let's just be honest. That's the other thing. People, and I know, I just recently, a creator said, narcissism is not on a spectrum. Yes, it's on a spectrum. Yes, it's on a spectrum. I mean, good grief, it's on a spectrum. But borderline personality disorder is also on a spectrum. We all have the same innate fears. You are not that different from me. I'm afraid of rejection and abandonment, and I'm also afraid of having someone squash me and not let me be fully me. That's your fear. That's the twin fear of borderline personality disorder: engulfment and abandonment. And it does make us really paralyzed. It paralyzes us. So we're all on the continuum. I'll never forget, I got to hear these two famous authors, theorists, they're psychoanalysts, speak at a Cape Cod conference. I got to hear them in person. And they wrote books, I'm not kidding you, books that are this thick on topics related to psychodynamics. And then one of their specialties was borderline personality disorder. They had a couple that they were showing as a demonstration to the group of therapists. And this was back when I was like in my 20s. And in this room with men that looked, I felt like I was sitting with Jung and Freud. They had these beards, and I almost expected like them to have a pipe, That's the men I was surrounded. And so here I am as a young woman, trying to start a practice and being a new psychologist in the field. And so their name is Schnarf, Dr. Jill and David Schnarf. They've written tons on the topic. And they were talking about this couple's fear of abandonment. And they looked at the whole audience of all of therapists and said, yes, this couple fears abandonment, like you, who also fears abandonment. They are like you. We all have this fear of abandonment. So yes, I understand it. The challenge is the regulation of the fear so that it doesn't overwhelm you and paralyze you from moving forward with life, or so that it doesn't move into negative energy and then you end up blowing your life up, which is the other thing that ends up happening sometimes. Yeah, so there's a little bit of drama happening here. Yeah, I do have a program on cognitive dissonance, Alex. If you'd like help with that, it's called First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist, and I know a whole lot about it. So if you'd like to learn more about that, you don't choose what? What don't you choose? Isn't everything on a spectrum? Yeah, I think it is actually. I think most things are on a spectrum because we're complex people. It's fast. We're all a little narcissistic. We all have a little bit of fragile ego, which is a narcissism, and we all have struggle with regulation of emotions. That's a little borderline personality disorder. And we don't want abandonment. That's also borderline personality disorder. Where we all have a little bit of touch, a lot of that stuff. I'm trying to go back to, oh, Kerry, you finished my book. Wow, I'd love to hear more about that. And I love that your name is Kerry. That's such a great name, Kerry. I need to remember that book, Kate. Hey, it's Kate. Would you text me afterwards? Would you DM me and bring up that book again so that I don't forget it? Because I will forget it. I know I will. I'd love to go look for it. And Brittany, I totally missed whatever you're struggling with. I totally missed it. Let me know if you need help. Yeah, I don't know what's really going on. I'm trying to go back and I can't find it. So I don't know about abandonment per se, but the abuse has left me with fear of how other people see me. Can you say more, Phoenix? What you mean by that? Oh, like you're too much or too needy. Yeah. Yeah, because so what happens with a narcissist, and it really can happen with any borderline, it can happen with any personality disorder, really. And it can actually happen to all of us. In fact, Dr. Schnarf wrote about it in his book called The Passionate Marriage. We do what's called emotional borrowing or emotional leaning on other people. So wherever your weaknesses are, you're going to try to hopefully find others around you who are going to really shore you up, strengthen you in those weak spots. We all do it. We all do it. An exact example of that is if you put on an outfit and you're feeling like it doesn't present you in the best light, you may say, do I look a little whatever to your partner and hope that they'll say, no, you look fantastic. When you're doing that, that's emotional borrowing. That's what you're doing in that moment. But we all do it. But the more we have personality deficits or weaknesses, the more we do it. And it's like building a house on bad foundation. So we all, our person, our selfhood is built on a foundation of strengths and weaknesses. And these things include ability to have good judgment, ability to handle our emotions, ability to resist temptation, impulse control is another way to say it, ability to have insight into ourselves so that we can make changes, ability to connect with other people through compassion and empathy, ability to set reasonable limits and follow through them, the ability to set goals. I mean, all of these things are part of ego strengths. And none of us have them perfectly. We just don't. We have all inherent weaknesses. Like even if I gave you an IQ test, you would have parts that are strong and you have parts that are weak. That's just normal for all of us. So what happens is that when we hit these places of weaknesses, we like to lean into other people for them to strengthen us. And the more weaknesses we have, the more we do that. Well, narcissists and other types of personality disorders do it a lot because they have a lot of weaknesses. Well, what they do then is they say to you, you need to be there in the way that I need you to be there for me in order for me to utilize you that way So they kind of take away our freedom and control and our choice in order for us to show up for them. And the more scarier they are, the better they are at sort of using intimidation, exploitation, and manipulation to do that, which then we do because it's so scary, we comply. And when we become their resource, we become their supply, which is really why we use that word. So, oh, thank you so much, Pillar Light, for a badge. Appreciate that. So yeah, it's why it's part of healing Phoenix is learning that you're not too much or you're not too needy, that you are perfectly the way you are, and reclaiming all your space that's you, and realizing that anybody's unhappy with you, and I need to hear this too, but anybody that's happy with you is really a reflection of their own struggle, and that they're using that struggle in an attempt to control you for them to feel better. Yeah. Change what you can and accept what you can't. Yeah. No, Brittany, your feelings are very deep. Whoever says your feelings are not deep doesn't, that's not true. We're all of us, our feelings are deep. Yeah, I agree with you, Keith. We're all a work in process. It's a soul journey when we do that work. I really agree with that. Yeah. And Bassy Paul, what's it? I would love to know what you're thinking. Fran says, yep, deflecting. Deflecting from what, Fran? Yeah. So Samantha says, my narcissistic husband is extremely touchy and very offended. And he takes anything and works it into a sense of himself of being rejected, even when I can't see why or how he took it that way. Yeah, exactly. See, that's a great example. So what has happened there is something triggered him, triggered shame, triggered insecurity, and he doesn't have the wherewithal to say within himself, I'm okay. This doesn't have to define me. I'm not a failure, or I'm not bad, or I'm not whatever word he would use when this happens. And then finding a way to sort of draw comfort from himself to to kind of repair the damage, whatever it was that damaged him. Instead, then he says, well, you need to be different. You need to treat me better. You need to be nicer. You need to not, whatever it is. However, he puts it out and makes it your problem instead of making it an internal problem. Something back to what we were saying earlier about learning to draw closer to ourselves and mothering ourselves in the middle of all of that. That's the harder work, is shoring ourselves up in the midst of that. Yeah, Sly, they do that. She says his eyes turn black when he anticipates. That's the fear. You're seeing a primitive brain activate. You're seeing his fight or flight system move into motion. Phoenix says, "Oh, geez, I offered support to a friend. I just realized I did it." I'm projecting. It is. It's all, we do it too. We do the same thing. We lean into others as well. We get scared, and with my friend that I was traveling with, I worried I wasn't a great companion because I wasn't being the kind of tourist that she probably wanted me to be. And that make me insecure. So I had to like do the work. Okay, you know what? It didn't feel good. It never felt good. I had to keep like saying to myself, it's okay. Even if she's not happy with me, even if this is not turning out the way she wants, that's still her responsibility. And my responsibility is to be responsible to me. It's back to, yeah, knowing how to self-soothe. I agree, Universal. It's back to that. We need to learn how to self-soothe. So Angie asks, can a narcissist cognitively come to internal awareness? I don't know. It depends on how much strength they have in the first place. So if we think of every skill like on a continuum from 0 of like none to a 100, all of it, which by the way, nobody's a 0 and nobody's a 100. Nobody, not you, not me, nobody. It depends on whether or not he's got something to work with, and can he grow that muscle? That's the question. And does he want to? That's the other harder part. Here's why I think narcissists don't change. I'm going to tell you why I think they don't change. Because it requires facing down the greatest fear all of us have, which is if others knew us as we really are, would anyone like who we are? And their fear is the answer is a whopping no. Well, they've done so much crap over the years that they don't like themselves. I mean, if they really were to stand back and look at themselves, there's not a lot to be very proud of. So part of coming to terms means you got to come to terms with what you've done, the past, everything that you've done, the whole whopping bit of it, make peace with it, and then incorporate it into yourself and move forward. Well, that's, I struggle with that. And I'm a very self-reflective person. I'm probably high on self-reflection. So it's not comfortable, very not comfortable. Yeah. I'm glad, Samantha, that helped. I'm glad that was a helpful thing. Yeah, it does change fast, lie, I agree. Can I repeat what last bit, Phoenix? Can they change that part, whether or not they can change? Change requires self-reflection and so it requires several things. It's very complicated actually to change ourselves. We have to first recognize something's wrong, okay? That means tolerating shame. So the minute you say, "Oh, like me, I felt enormous shame in that New Orleans store, enormous amount of shame. So I had to like look at it. Okay, yeah, I didn't make the right action. I should have stopped it when it was happening. So to change requires us to say something's going wrong and to admit that and to deal with the shame that comes up when we feel that and face that. The next thing is then we have to measure what's doing wrong and how to do it right. That means we have to look at ourselves, assess what we're doing and why we're doing it, and figure out what we can do better. And then it means we need to actually make the change and incorporate our past or who we've been, how we've been handling things, make sense of it, incorporate who we are in order to do something with it productively moving forward. And unfortunately, that's really, really hard. It's a hard work to do that. It's again, we have to face down shame and fear because we have this innate fear. If people really knew who we were, especially narcissists, nobody would like them. And because of what they do, we don't like them. We often we struggle to like them at all. So they got to do something with it. In order to become a different person, you have to make peace with who you are, the sum total of everything you've ever done. And you have to like somehow figure out how you're going to take that and move it forward. It's hard work. It's really hard work. So yeah, and then do something productively to stop it from happening the next time. Yeah, it's when your core is so here's a big difference between narcissists and antisocial personality disorders. And even borderline personality disorders. Narcissists' core is shame. It's a fragile ego built on shame. And they hide. Everything they do is hiding. They're just like, you can't know me. I will never be vulnerable because if you know me, you would not choose me. A core of an antisocial personality disorder, a sociopath, is boredom. They have no fear. They're just bored. To them, they just don't have an emotional connection to anybody or themselves even. They're just flat and empty. They've been theorized that may have what's called an empty core, that there's not. So the core of a narcissist is shame. I would say a core of an antisocial personality is nearly empty. It's just not much there. So they do everything out of a thrill. Everything's out of like, they just love to upset things and create dramas because it's exciting and that's better than being bored. The borderline personality disorders core tends to be fear. It tends to be, fear of loss, fear of engulfment, loss of self. It tends to be very fear-based. So the challenge for all of us, because we all have little bits of it, we're all a little bit bored, right? And we're all a little bit fearful, and we're all a little bit shameful. So all of our challenge is how we're going to address those parts of ourselves in order to be the best person possible. Yeah, I fear being abandoned and rejected too, very much so. And one of the things that I've experienced in my life, which was told to me by a therapist, is I've experienced a lot of loss, real loss in my life. So for me, it's true, Are narcissists also cheaters like are borderline personalities or cheaters like narcissists? Not generally. No, not generally. Those that I've known have not been. Can they be? Sure, they could be love addicts just like narcissists can be, but I don't think they necessarily are. I don't think that's, narcissists are looking for supply, and borderline personalities is looking for stability and acceptance. This is off the top of my head. I would love to know, any of you who've been diagnosed with BPD, do you agree? I'd love to know if you agree with me or not. Yeah, when you mimic the narcissist, you become insecure and really off balance. Oh yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, anybody here with BPD? Do you think that those with BPD are cheaters? I don't think so. I don't have that experience. So Bronco wants to know, is it normal that I have so much anxiety now that I've comes to dating, but I want a partner? Yeah, you agree, bartender? Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate it, because I'm just, like I said, it was off the top of my head. But yeah, it is normal to have that much fear. We don't want to make a mistake again. We're afraid, very afraid. Yeah, I agree. BPD tend to be clingy and faithful. As long as you don't overwhelm them. as long as you don't control them too much. What's a narcissist ashamed of? They're ashamed of being known. I heard Ben Taylor of Raw Motivation say this. He put this in one of his emails, that he's afraid if anyone really knew who he was, that they wouldn't like him. So it's a core fear. It's sad thing. Here's a sad thing. And this is what you learn when you're a writer. Writing gets the best when it's the most vulnerable, because the deeper you dig into yourself, the more universal your experience is with everybody else. Did you catch that? The deeper you dig into yourself, the more universal those truths are to everybody else. So when I go to my shameful, scared places, I then resonate better with you because you have shameful, scared places as well. And you're going to accept me greater because you're like me. So that's the irony of this whole thing with narcissism. If the narcissist would relax and realize that we love them because they're imperfect, they're afraid that we love them because they're perfect. No. We love them when they're imperfect, not when they're perfect. It's so sad. It's so sad. Yeah, I don't think so either, but I haven't been in a committed relationship because I don't want to burn anybody with my emotional baggage. The sad thing is that universal love, this is true for all of us. We all have to work out our fear and trepidation in relationship to get healthier for relationships. Unfortunately, it can't really happen alone very well. We can only get so far in our healing, but we really have to take the risks. We have to take the risks out and start to try to practice with somebody who has the same kind of patience and acceptance that we have for them, that they have for us, when you can find someone reciprocal. So, is a girl living 6 months with you claiming to love you, then goes total stranger right after a breakup? Is she a narcissist? Or could it be BP? I don't know. That's too little information. But then she stole my cat. I'm sorry that all that happened. That's awful, though she was staying with me. Sounds awful. I don't really know why she did that, but that wasn't with integrity, that's for sure. I would say that's really painful. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a real rough go, Alex. I'm sorry to hear that. It sounds like you had a hard time with that. I hope you're recovering okay. I hear you trying to make sense. That's what I hear you're doing right now. You're trying to make sense of what happened to you, for sure. Yeah. Well, guys, I'm going to if anybody has one or two more questions, I'll take those questions before we wrap it up today. But I so loved hanging out with you today. And then I will be back on Thursday at 1:00, and we'll be doing tapping and other self-soothing mechanisms to help us re-regulate ourselves when we're feeling very distressed. And I have a guided breath work that I do. It's called Releasing Pain and Inviting Light. I may end it with that on Thursday. I'm super excited. I know everyone I've done it with has really loved it. So I may do that, share that with you guys so you can see what it's like for you. And I'd love to know what you think. So Universal Love says, I have a brother who's undiagnosed narcissist, and I don't know how he lives with himself. He doesn't have the remorse for being abusive. No, he actually does have remorse, but he's walled it off. He's walled it off so he has no access to it. They're very good at very primitive defense mechanisms like projection, splitting, denial, and compartmentalization. So chances are it's there somewhere. He's just walled it so far off that he no longer knows that he has it anymore. They're very good. Narcissists are very good at just shutting down emotions like that. Very, very good at that. It's 1:00 on Thursday, 1:00 Central Standard Time on Thursday. So I'll do the tapping in the beginning and I'll end it with a releasing pain. We'll actually imagine what the pain is like inside you, and then we'll invite hope, light, whatever it is you want to invite back. We'll invite that back. We'll do that exercise at the end, sort of like to do this big thank you for doing the guided meditation and breath work with me for the past 8 weeks. I so appreciate that. So that will be at 1:00 Central Standard Time. And for those of you who may have missed, I'm starting a membership next week that's going to be doing that along with office hours. We'll be having academy classes. We'll be doing all sorts of direct work with each other. It's $75 for the lower levels on special right now, and the higher levels $100 a month. And I'm super excited about it. I know that's expensive, but when you put it in the terms of I'm a licensed psychologist, this is cheaper than one cost of a coaching call per month. It's less than the cost of a coaching call per month. I think it's a great benefit. And when I was in group therapy, I was paying $200 a month for that. So do I believe narcissists are demon possessed? I believe that anybody could potentially be demon oppressed or possessed. I typically don't answer religious questions though, Alex, just because I try to keep this more mental health focused. So, yeah. But they sure do scary things, that's for sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Universal. It's been wonderful meeting you today. I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing what you did. It was wonderful getting to know you a little bit better. Thank you for that. And I appreciate all of you being here today, hanging out with me. I know this is not a normal time that I don't normally, but I'm going to start to do it at 4. So just so you know, on Tuesdays I'm going to do this at 4. So you can kind of start to put it kind of way mentally away, that Central Standard Time at 4. But I will be back on Thursday at 1, and that will be my last one. Otherwise, I'll be spending that time in the membership. If you want to learn more, please check out the link in my bio. I appreciate that so much. You guys have a great day. Phoenix, I'm glad you're here too. And thank you. I'm glad I'm glad I was able to answer your questions, Cindy, Gal, Texas. I'm in Texas, so good to see you. So really wonderful. And Samantha and Plural Light and Devana and all of you guys, thank you so much for coming back and being my regulars. I really, really appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you on Thursday.